Hey developers, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a crucial aspect of .NET Web API development, and that is middleware. If you want to enhance your API with powerful functionalities, you've come to the right place. From handling requests and responses to login and authentication, middleware is an unsung hero of Web API. Stick around to learn why it is useful, when to use it, and how to create your own middleware using request delegate and now the iMiddleware interface. So the question is, what exactly is middleware? Have you heard of it before? Yes, I do. And have you also heard of it before? Yes, I believe you've heard of it before. Middleware is a piece of software that intercepts HTTP requests and our responses in a pipeline. It allows you, the developer, to handle cross-cutting concerns like login, authentication, authorization, and error handling. You can create middleware to intercept HTTP requests and our responses using the request delegate and also the iMiddleware interface. You know, when the user makes a request to an API, it first has to go to the controller. Then the controller finds the specific endpoint, that is an action, to process the request. Now, before the request gets to the controller, in case you have middleware, that is where the request will pass through. So before a controller receives your request, middleware will be in place, a middleman. Now, after that is a request, after the process has been done from your endpoint, your action, and it is returning to the user, that's a response. It also passes through this middleware. So you see that your in and your out, or in this middleware can take an action. So that's the reason why we are saying that middleware intercepts your request and our responses. As far as it does this, then we can create a custom logic in that. You know, Microsoft has provided the simplest way of authentication. But let's assume, well, you don't want to use that. You want to create your own custom authentication. How can you do that? Instead of you doing it in the controller, making the controller code a lot, no. All that you can do here is to create a middleware to handle that. In this video, we're going to create two middlewares. Now, the first one is going to be an authentication middleware. It's going to check whether the request header contains a header key known as auth. In case it has that, it means the person is authenticated. Now, we create another middleware. Now, this middleware will be in place, or it will rely on the authentication middleware that we have created. And now, this middleware is going to be known as authorization middleware. It's going to check the value of this auth state, because the authentication state is going to check, do we have any header known as an auth state? Yes, we have. In case we have it, then it returns it. But in case it does not have any header known as auth state, then we want to short circuit the middleware, or that's the request. And as soon as we short circuit the request, it's going to return it, and now the process is not going to continue on. The next middleware is not going to continue on, or the action is not going to be called. You see this? So that's exactly what we are going to do here. Now let's see, I have my web API project created already. As you can see from the screen, I haven't done anything to it. It is a default one as you create it from this template. Now the next thing we're going to do here is let's create authentication middleware. But before that, we need to create simple controller. Well, we have a default controller in there, so there's no need to waste time on that. Okay, now let's see. So I'm going to create a folder in here, and I'll name it as middlewares, because we're going to create two middlewares now. So let's say this is, I have my middlewares. Oh, I forgot E. Yes. Okay, so the first middleware that we're going to create here is going to be a class, and we're going to name this class as authentication middleware. And now this middleware is going to use the request delegate. Okay, so you know, C# version 8, you can inject method here as a primary constructor. So let's use the request delegate, and that is this, and we can give it the name of next. Now this next here tells you that it's going to execute the next middleware. You can see in an API you have a lot of middlewares, default and now the custom ones that you're going to create yourself. Next key here is going to execute the next middleware in the pipeline. So we need to implement this request delegate in it. So now that we have our request delegate, what is the next thing that we're going to do? We have to create a method which has a name as invoke async, and in there we're going to pass in our HTTP context. The context here contains the request coming in. For now, it has no response because it hasn't touched the endpoint. So as soon as it touches the endpoint and everything is set, then you're going to have the request in there, and we can also intercept it and now modify the request or do anything that you want to do with the request. That's the response. But for now, we have the request as coming from the client as an HTTP context. So we can have that method created, and then there we pass in our HTTP context as a parameter as well. Alright, so in here, with this what we're doing, we want to just check the request in case it has the header of this key or state. We grab that, and in case it does not, then we want to just return it. So you can see we are returning a problem details, and here we set the content type to this, and now the response we write to in the form of what? JSON. So this is what it's going to do. Now as soon as it has this request, yes, we want to execute the next middleware. But in case it doesn't have a header known as the auth state, then it's going to return this, and it's not going to continue on. It's going to short circuit this middleware. All right, so now that we have this, let's see how do you use or how do you register a request created which is using the request delegate, or a middleware created which is using a request delegate. This is quite simple. Just copy the name of the middleware, then let's go to our program.cs file, and then in there here we have to use app.use middleware, and I have to make sure that before the controller you must put it on top, because it has to work before the controller. So the ordering is very also important. Now let's say app.use middleware, then let's specify our middleware that we have created. So let's implement, or let's add a namespace to this. So let's put a breakpoint here, or maybe we can put a breakpoint here, and now let's run application and see. So before the controller, that's the weather forecast controller, gets hit, this method must hit first. So let's wait and check it out. So we have our Swagger, or that's we have an endpoint displayed here nicely. Now let's try to get a list of weather forecast. As soon as I click on this, we must have our breakpoint hit, and that is it. You can see it is hit. Now if I click on this, you can see it has no header. This is not found. And if this is not found, it's going to execute this. So if I click on the next middleware is not going to get executed. It's going to return this error to the user. So let's have a look. You can see now you have this error. So no authentication header found. That's the 404. And this is a custom message that you want to display by using this inbuilt problem details class. Okay, so you can do this with that. And aside from that, the next thing I'm going to do here is, so you see here we are using a request delegate. Let's try, I have a postman in here. So let me pull this out. Great. Now I have, let's grab the name, the link, well, that is our address. So I have this copied. Let's go to the postman, and then in here let's paste this. Since it is get method, we maintain as get. Now when you come to the header, let's say there's no header here, click on send, and you're going to have this hit. So now we know that it's going to get hit. As soon as it doesn't found that, then it's going to return no authentication header found. Okay, now let's add a header here. So the header is an auth state. Take note, this is an auth state. It's a custom one that we have created. Now this auth state, if I click on send, let's see, we have the same thing because there's no key specified. Well, let's say this is not authenticated. We even have not authenticated, but if I click on send this, you can see we have the data here, because let's put a breakpoint and now have a look. Let's put a breakpoint in here, and now let's click on it again. Execute, but not this one. As for this, it's not still found. I'm talking about the postman, because that is where you've added the header. Click on send. This point is hit. Now if I click on this, you see we have not authenticated key here. So we have the key as hostage, and the value here is what, not authenticated. As far as is able to find something like this, then we can now go on and execute the next request. Now the next request here is going to execute the controller. Now the controller has an action method, so in there we can get what we want to get, and that is exactly what we are getting. So we're getting a list of weather forecast. But let's see, so let's create another middleware. This middleware is going to inherit from the interface of our middleware pipeline, that's the middleware. And now within that, we also want to check, in case it has this state, we want to grab the value. In case it is equal to authenticated, then we want to execute this. In case it isn't, then maybe we can get something else and display it. Okay, so that's an authorization that we are going to create ourselves using the interface of this middleware interface. So let's see. Let's stop this. Let's go to the same middleware. Now let's create our own also, and that will be an authorization middleware. So let me just right click on this, then we can add this here. So with this, all that you need to do here is implement this, the interface of middleware. So let's implement the interface, and we have that. Now we're going to also do the same thing in there, and it's going to work same. So you can see we are getting the middleware here, getting the header, that is an state. Now since we know the authorization is going to check if it is there, so here we do not even check if it is now is not equal to now, because the first middleware is going to handle that. Now by the time that I get to the second middleware, state it is there, so you want to check, you want to confirm, or here we are comparing it, and I'm checking, is it equal to this authenticated? If it is, then we want to continue with this. But in case it isn't, then we want to do the same thing, and I return state is equal to the state that we have in here, and now you are not allowed to access this. So maybe in case we have this, in case it isn't, we can create another method. We can use you can create another logic to handle that. For now, this is what you want to do. We want to make sure that the user who is going to access that endpoint or that action method has a header known as an state, and the state as a key has a value of authenticated. You see? So here we want to check. Now after doing this, this must be an async. That's the reason why we have this red lines. So now how do we do this? You know, this before this authorization will work, authentication should be the first thing to work, then this follows. But as soon as we are injecting from this, or we are implementing this interface, we have to first register the service. So how do you register that? You go to program.cs file, then first register this as transient. So build out the services, then .add transient, and now in here you make sure you put the middleware here. After that, then let's see the order. We want to execute this middleware first before this. So let's make it the next one, and I make it like this. So we have authentication middleware in here, then we have our authorization middleware also created. So you can see that here we are not implementing the default middleware, the default authentication system, but we can also implement your own customized one to suit what you want. Okay, this is just a demo to show you how to do it, but this is not actually authentication system that we are building using this middleware. It's a demo to show you how to work with it. Okay, so now that we have this, let's run this also and I'll check it out. So if I click on this, the first, that's authentication middleware, is going to get executed, and it's going to return no authentication header found. Okay, now let's say we have our postman which has authentication header, but you can see here this is not equal to authenticated. So if I click on send, now the second middleware is going to get executed. Now you can see from here that we have the second middleware that is known as the authorization middleware, And in that, you're having the auth state does exist. We know that, but it is not equal to this. You see? So in order for us to make it equal to get the data that we want, let's go in there and modify that. This should be authenticated. So it's authenticated. Now let's go to our postman in here, and now let's specify this as authenticated. So if I click on send, you can see that here we have our data. So authentication is going to take place first, then authorization can also take place, and then as next. You can also add another middleware for a custom logic based on what you want or based on how your system is going to look like. You can do that. Now aside from that, is it all the time that I need to create an request delegate middleware using a separate class? Well, not the time. When you have a simple middleware that you want to create, you can just use it straight ahead in your program.cs file. And this also is a request delegate. Let's see how to do that. Now in your program.cs file, you can do that from where you have this app. So in case maybe I want to get it here, then I can put it from the next. That is the order that I want to get executed. So I want to log this. All that I need to do here is quite simple. So if everything works, then the order you're going to use here is use this app.use. Then here you're also creating a request delegate middleware. So you can see here you are configuring it inside your program.cs file. Okay, but when you have a lot of logic that you need to implement, then it is better that you put it in a class. But simple ones, short ones, well, you can go ahead and now put it in here. So this is what we are doing. You want to get, we have the context here as an HTTP context, as an incoming request coming in. We have the next delegate, and now this is going to execute the next middleware. And then from this, the next middleware here is going to be the controller. So when you check this, you want to display the request method and also the path. And that's exactly what we want to do. After that, you want to display this. Now, after the next, you can also create a logic in here like display or console.writeLine. This after the next delegate has executed. You can also put some custom logic here. And this logic is going to get fired when the next middleware has been executed. Okay, because this is going to execute the next. So after that, they're going to have this in here. Now let's maintain this, and if I also run this, let's see what's going to happen. All this must be true. They should be successful before this can get executed. So if I hit this as a normal one, the first middleware, that is authentication, is going to get executed. Now if we check the console, you will see we are not going to have any console here, any message from our program, because the first middleware got hit and it short circuited that request because it couldn't find what it wants. You can see. Now let's use our postman, and here we have this. Click on the next one, and you're also going to have the next circuit. So you can see here we have the data because we have this state. We have provided the header what it needs as a value and the key. So when you go to the console, are we going to have that in there? Let's see. You can see that you have the content root path, and that is the content root path in here. And now the endpoint that we are getting it here, that's why we have / with a forecast. Because when you check our method, we want to get the method and we want to get the path. You see? So we have the method in there, and now we have the path. So there is a path, and we have our method as get. You see? So that is a simple way to handle middleware. And now this knowledge that you have now, you can go beyond this by creating middleware for login, for authentication, for authorization, or for even a customized middleware whereby you can manage the header with a key and a value, and I retrieve them even in your controller and now check it. This is most useful when creating microservices. And maybe in the future videos, we talk about how to implement middleware in microservices by managing the header and retrieving the header value in the next service. Alright, so to wrap everything up, middleware is a powerful tool in your web API arsenal. It helps you manage common tasks efficiently. Whether you choose request delegate or the interface of iMiddleware depends on the specific needs of yours. Understanding and implementing middleware will take your API development in the next level. Yes, and that is exactly what we've seen. Thank you for watching this. If you find this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for notification on future tutorial. Drop a comment if you have any question in mind as well, and I would love to answer you. Alright, so catch you again. Till then, take care.